Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Meanwhile Here on Earth. This program features in-depth conversations with the leading names in the subjects of UFOs, abductees, the paranormal, panel discussions, and the very best and brightest of the next generation of writers and researchers. Meanwhile Here on Earth, the show breaking new ground in alternative talk with your intrepid host, veteran investigative writer and researcher, Peter Robbins.
Here on Earth.
Brother Peter, you're muted.
Take two. Good evening. It's Peter Robbins. The show is Meanwhile Here on Earth. Okay, we're still on. And my guest tonight is an old friend and an astronomer who takes the subject of truly anomalous UFOs seriously. Marc D'Antonio's degree is in astronomy, and he has spent decades capturing hundreds of thousands of images of many kinds of sky phenomena using a diverse range of photographic gear ranging from small cameras and backyard telescopes to large multi-million-dollar professional telescopes in large research laboratories. He is a member of a STEM board at a prestigious science center in Connecticut that serves the needs of many New England educational facilities. STEM, which stands for Science, Technology, Engineering, and Math, reflects the need to place a clear focus on these disciplines and places an emphasis on how the disciplines interrelate in order to provide advantage to children as well as adults. Work in the TV and film industry, Marc appears on a number of network programs over the years, including on ABC, CNN, Discovery, Sci-Fi, the History Channel, National Geographic, Science Channels, and performing on camera work in his role as a professional astronomer, UFO investigator, scientific principal presenter, and photo-video analyst. In addition to such roles, he also creates visual effects, props, directs visual effects to shoots, and creates computer-generated imagery for productions. He can be seen on NASA's Unexplained Files on the Discovery Channel, What on Earth on the Science Channel, The Proof is Out There on the History Channel, In Search Of, hosted by Zachary Quinto, Contact on Discovery, and a variety of other shows. Currently, Marc and FX Models have teamed up with Academy Award-winning producer and director Douglas Trumbull to create major science fiction films and television series that explore humankind's place in the universe. He has been performing for live audiences since the age of 12 and states that the TV and film industry are far more forgiving than a live audience when things go wrong. Oh, is that true? Besides his MUFON duties, Marc delivers many presentations around the world at some of the largest conferences and smaller ones as a speaker to discuss the science we do know from a scientific perspective. As such, he is a voice of reason amidst what at times is somewhat chaotic. He explains the real prospects of finding extraterrestrial life in the solar system and elsewhere. I could go on, but we only have 2 hours. Marc D'Antonio, welcome back to Meanwhile Here on Earth, my friend.
Oh, Peter, well, thank you so much. It's really fun to be here. And, kudos to your producer, a good friend of mine, Race Hobbs, who does a wonderful job. He's part of the reason that I sound so good, so I listen to him very often when he makes these comments about, hey, brother, you got to fix your sound, whatever, So anyway, kudos to him for producing your show, and great to see you as well.
Yes, it had been, I think, 2 years since we had seen each other last, when we saw each other at the beginning of this month in beautiful Palm Springs at
That's
Contact. in the desert. And
That's right.
just as we were going to sound check, I was asking you about it because it was the first one that I attended. And of course, it's been running for a decade now, and I had heard quite a lot about it. But wow, what a
Yeah,
well-organized and remarkably interesting event.
that's right. Gordon and Ron do a great job of putting this thing together, and I met Gordon several times, Gordon Peckrell, of course, and his daughter Christina, and she actually loved SkyTour LiveStream, our remote observatory stuff, and she got one of our T-shirts, in fact. So it was really cool that they support it. They don't just talk about it. They don't not doing it just for kudos and for cash, because that's not what it's about.
It
Ron Jenks does a great job too running this thing, and he's
sure
running
does.
around. Yeah,
It interested me that it's run as a nonprofit, which takes the air immediately out of any, skeptics or debunkers who want to talk about people being in this for the money. You're in it for a great deal of work.
yes,
And obviously, they have to have a full-time staff. This event drew almost 2,000 people this year with something like 80 separate presenters. Of course, do the math. We're all working against each other or
yep, that's right.
complementing each other, but it's Christians and lions. You've got to cut one loose and go to the other. It really also had one of the finest teams of volunteers I've
That's
ever
right.
seen in terms of being on purpose and getting the job done.
Yep.
But before that, you and I had done a radio interview years ago when I was on KGRA,
Yep.
and I began it with my usual question, which I think, just for old time's sake, I'll begin again. Where were you born? And tell us a little about your childhood and family.
Oh, I was born in Bristol, Connecticut, and ended up settling in Plainville, Connecticut. My grandfather ran a small grocery store in Plainville, Connecticut. He was an old, first original Italian off the boat. He came over here on the SS United States. I looked at it. I looked up the Ellis Island records, and I saw my aunt, my grandfather, and my other aunt when they came over. I found their signature of my grandfather, in the Ellis Island manifest. It was really cool to see that. Yeah. And then, so obviously my father was a Plainville, Connecticut. Plainville. I mean, how much more plain can you get? Plainville, but it was really cool growing up in Plainville, because we actually had starry skies in Plainville for many years.
Yeah.
And, I've talked about this before. When I was 9 years old, I ended up having a missing time event in a class. We went to a pond on a school bus, and I remember getting out with my lunch, and I remember getting off the bus with my little bag lunch in my hands.
Sure.
And I remember the next thing I remember, I'm getting on the bus again with my little bag lunch still in my hands.
Oh.
And we're on our way home. And it was the later afternoon. And it's like, when are we going to the pond? And of course, the kids are mean at that age. They're slapping me around and pushing me and saying, "We've been there all day, you jerk. Where were you?" And I was literally like, I had no idea where I was. And but from that point on, Peter, and I've told people this.
Yeah, and when we first met, that detail I didn't remember, and it's very telling. It's a classic in a way, and very unnerving. How can it not be?
Yeah, well, with your friendship with Bud Hopkins, okay, it's very important, because when I came home, I had seizures and convulsions, and I had to be taken to the hospital.
Had you ever had anything like that before?
Never again, and never hadn't up to that point, and never again since then.
Do you remember what they told your folks about what the cause might be?
Oh yeah, absolutely. They first of all, let me explain. When I didn't remember anything that happened, I basically thought that I lost the whole day. When I came home, my mother said, "Go out and play, and I'll call you when it's dinner time. You should have eaten your lunch." And I went, I didn't. I don't remember, any of the day. And the whole day felt weird to me, because it was like getting dark way too soon, it seemed to me, And when I went outside, I was playing in the empty lot next to the house, and the sun started to go, down around 9 o'clock at that time. So it was still daytime. So my mother called. I went in and ate and went outside to play. Then I had these convulsions and seizures, and somebody called the ambulance, and boop, off we went. But you know what? While I was having the seizures, I was banging my head on the ground really hard and watching red ants run around and thinking as I'm hitting my head on the ground hard and totally out of control. I wasn't fearful. I wasn't scared. I was thinking, oh, look at all those ants.
Classic. I felt the same thing
Okay.
looking at ants.
Yeah. And so I was thinking, I'm going to hit the ants with my forehead. I'm going to have ants crawling all over me. That's what I was thinking. I wasn't thinking about you're having seizures. Okay. So I went to the hospital and the doctor looked at my forehead and saw this big bump that had dirt and grain embedded in it because, of course, I was hitting my head. And what did he say? Oh, he had a concussion. Because look, there's a bump on his head. Okay. And he must have hit his head. And they said to me, Mark, did you hit your head? And I'm like, well, yeah, in the lot, when I was out in the empty lot, I was hitting my head in the ground. No, what about before that? You must have fallen before. And I was like, oh, okay, maybe I fell on a dock at the pond. I don't know. Oh, okay, well, that's what it was. That's what they were saying. So they brought me home and they treated me for a concussion, which I didn't know what a concussion was. And that didn't feel like what it was. But anyway, as it turned out, I lied about the dock because I just wanted to come home. And if you go to Burr Pond today, that's Burr in Torrington, Connecticut, which is where this was, there's no docks at Burr Pond. It's an untouched pond. It's got shoreline that's been cleared for people to come in and look at the natural pond life. There's no docks. There's no boardwalks. It's a raw pond to this day. So there's never a dock there. But I will tell you this. After that incident, the missing time, I remember very strongly going out at night and feeling very uncomfortable. I would look up and feel like something's looking at me. And it was, I didn't connect it to seizures or whatever. And I started looking at the stars at night. And in a weird way, I felt like there was somebody up there looking back at me from those stars. And that started me on a journey of astronomy. And it was only about a month after this event when I said to my mother, hey, Ma, can you and Dad buy me a telescope? And they put the feelers out to friends, and friends donated money to the poor kids stuck at home. Okay. Now, I had also had a medical event, and I needed surgery when I was 9, and I was home for a month, So being home for a month, I didn't have a lot to do. So I spent a lot of time looking up at the stars and feeling like I had to watch them because they were watching me and I had to keep protected. It was the weirdest thing. Anyway, so that's kind of what I did. You're muted, by the way.
I think either the aliens or the intelligence agencies keep muting me. It's obviously not just a technical problem.
Well, with a library like yours, why wouldn't they? I mean, you have all the answers right behind you.
That's green screen to make me look smart. What did your dad do for a living?
My father never graduated high school, and he washed other people's dirty clothes for his living. And he still wore a smile. He was still very proud. Okay. Italian father from my Italian grandfather, right? And Italian mother and his mother. And so it was always one of those things where I looked at him and I thought of myself thinking, he washes other people's dirty clothes for a living, and he still smiles. There's a life lesson there. And I took it. So I've never really stopped smiling, and I've never complained about my place in life or what I do, because I felt like he did so much worse than me in that regard. You know what I mean? Very, very highly respected.
I do know what you mean. And it's worth a digression in that you're talking about your grandfather coming through Ellis Island. Mm-hmm. My mother's parents came through there as well. And I've seen the records of their entry, as many people have. Whether or not you're from a recent immigrant family or an older immigrant family, because unless you're a Native American Indian, you are an immigrant. If you ever have the chance and they're in New York City, go to Ellis Island. It's part of the trip out to the Statue of Liberty.
Yeah.
And it's one of the most remarkable facilities. If you're anyway into the paranormal, there's a zillion spirits in there.
I bet there are.
I walked in the very first time, 3 days after they opened. They were still working on it. It's a totally miserable day, rain coming down sideways, maybe half a dozen people. Walked into the main hall, took one look around, and burst into tears. It was
Really?
just overly emotional. All the lives that, 10, 20, 30 million that passed through that room and became Americans or not.
America was built through Ellis Island in a lot of ways.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's right.
Had you thought about astronomy separately as a kid, or did it kind of come from this non-standard event and connecting what had happened with the sky?
Yeah, it came from this event. I was always interested in science. Okay, make no bones. I mean, when I was 10 and 11, I was making hydrogen balloons in my backyard and a hydrogen still that I concocted based on books I read on chemistry, and blowing them up in that empty lot. And it would bring the police every time because it would go boom, and then rattles would shake, windows would rattle, you hear all this rattling stuff.
Science, wonderful.
Oh, yeah. And so, but I was learning how to make pure hydrogen out of this. And I was 10 or 11 years old. Now, Mrs. Brown, bless her heart, was a librarian in the grown-up section of the Plainville Public Library in Plainville, Connecticut. I'd drive down there on my bike. I'd go in the lower door because that was the children's entrance.
But then make your way upstairs.
I'd go upstairs and Mrs. Brown would say, Marky, you can't be up here. This is the grown-up section. I said, I need grown-up books, Mrs. Brown. And she came over and sat with me and said, well, tell me what you're looking for. And I think she was actually serious. And I said, okay. I said, now this is an 11-year-old saying this, so you can imagine how she took it. I don't know how much you know about chemistry, Mrs. Brown, but I need books on chemistry. And she was like little twitch. And it's like, I need to find out how to make chemical equations, how they work. And she's like, well, when you get older, you can go, no, I don't want to wait until high school. I know in high school we learn about that. Okay, or I will. I want to do it now. And she's like, well, you could convince your parents to buy you a chemistry set. I was like, ding. Okay, add that to the list.
Ooh.
And I went, okay, but can I take out some grown-up books on chemistry? And, they don't let children take out those grown-up books because obviously they're kids. And they'll leave
could
them
go wrong?
Hey, look, my paper. Yeah, no. So I ended up convincing her to let me take out both astronomy and chemistry books. I took out a physics book too, and that was like, at that point, it was like so far over my head that I just didn't read past the acknowledgments because even those are written beyond me. Okay, again, I was 11 years old. So, but the chemistry book made sense because they were symbols that I could relate to. C, that's carbon. Okay. 1, that's hydrogen. And there's this thing called a periodic table or periodic, I don't know. And then I had to look up ask someone actually how to pronounce it. And they said, it's periodic. Okay. How's it work? Beats me. I hated chemistry in school. That's what I got for answers all the time. So much of it I had to learn on my own. So as I'm looking elementary chemistry, I started to look at how elements combine. I had yet to realize that every element in your body, every element in mine was made at millions and millions of degrees, hundreds of millions of degrees Celsius in the heart of a star. Okay. But that's true. And when Carl Sagan said, we are star stuff, that was so true. Okay. My favorite astronomer. And I listened to Carl Sagan an awful lot. I enjoyed his philosophy. I enjoyed how he approached science. And he actually had the most cogent intellectual argument for why there could be life in the universe, yet he himself didn't believe that there might be until much later. But he recognized that we're carbon-based beings, right? I knew as a kid that we were made of carbon. But then I said, well, carbon is charcoal, I learned. So we're not made of charcoal. I didn't yet understand that carbon combines with other things to make different compounds, right? I didn't know that yet. But little by little, I started learning that. By reading these chemistry books, I figured it out. That's also, unfortunately, where I nearly got myself arrested by making the hydrogen balloons. But you know what? That aside, that's a minor thing.
And you were a minor.
I was a minor doing minor things, making little Hindenburgs in my backyard and blowing them up. Yeah, and doing it at night, too, when you can see the big ball of fire. Boom! Wow! Wow!
I wish I had lived in your neighborhood.
No, because when the neighbors, when their windows would rattle, they thought there was an explosion somewhere, and they'd call the police. And
Go figure.
About 4 to 6 minutes after I would do a balloon, okay, and the whole at night the neighborhood would glow orange for a split second. I was like, whoa. Okay, these are big, So anyway, it took hours to fill one balloon. So my still wasn't very efficient. But I did make moisture traps to take out the water that was leaving to go with it. There was water vapor. I had to trap that. So I used up all my mother's cotton. I emptied 2 gallons of milk and said I drank it all, which I didn't. I just poured it down the sink. And I filled the gallon jugs with cotton and put hoses into the bottom coming out of the top. And I made 2 connected gallon jugs filled with cotton. And so as the gas went through there, the cotton trapped the water vapor. And the water would drip down to the bottom and go out little holes I put in the bottom. Right? And so I had the most purest hydrogen coming out of the top. Yeah. And that took me half the summer to figure that out, because most of my hydrogen balloons in the beginning were too heavy to fly because there was water vapor covering the inside of the containers of the plastic balloon.
You worked that bug out.
I did. I had to make my own balloons because the regular latex balloons, that didn't work because you had to have pressure to blow them up. And
How does one make a balloon? 11-year-old.
Well, I told you before that my father made his living cleaning up after people's dead clothes, cleaning other dirty clothes. So I would go down there and fold towels for him, because he also picked up towels at the local schools for the gym classes. And he'd give me like $1 an hour. Okay. And then I said, can I have some of these clothing bags, Dad? How many do you want?
Oh.
Should I have 10? Oh, no. Yeah. Those are expensive. I'll give you 3. Okay. So these are the big, tall, giant clothing bags. Very lightweight.
That could go up into the ionosphere, man.
And they did. Well, one did. I mean, I had one get away. I was shooting at these things with flaming arrows. Okay. And I had a can of gasoline right next to me.
As one does.
As one usually does. I had a Maxwell House can of gas, Maxwell House coffee can.
That's good to be shooting gasoline. Flaming arrows that close to a canister. It's
I know, right?
Childhood. We had some wonderful times.
I'm still here.
Continue on.
Do I dare? So I wrapped little cloth athletic tape on the end over the arrow point. Okay. And just behind the arrow point. So I wanted the point to still exist. And then right behind was a thickening. And on that thickening, I would douse it in gasoline and light it up. And then I would shoot it off on my little cowboy and Indians bow that my mother got me. And it wasn't a very good bow. It went maybe 12 feet, 15 feet.
Close enough, far enough away that you're not engulfed in flames.
You would think. You'd think. So what happened was I shot these things and the flame went toward the balloon, and then the balloon went poof and just popped away from it, and I had them tethered. Okay. Because I shot one that was going up in the sky and I kept missing the balloon, but those arrows kept coming down and lighting the empty lot on fire. I had to go stomp out the fire after that too. So anyway, I ended up tethering the balloons, and then I shot more level, and I would shoot at the balloons, and the point, and again, it was a very bad bow. So it was like go boom. It would just push the balloon out of the way and the balloon would come back and float around. Okay. So I developed the genius idea of taking an arrow, dipping the end in gas with nothing on it, and then lighting it on fire, and then walking over and poking the balloon.
Oh, close up.
The
Brilliant.
arrows, what, 14 inches long?
Plenty of room.
What could go wrong? I had no idea how flammable hydrogen was. I saw the Hindenburg video and I said, wow, I mean, is hydrogen really that bad? So I made hydrogen to find out. My goal was to make a real Hindenburg model and light it on fire to see if I could recreate it.
Who wouldn't want to do that?
I know. And so it's like I wanted to always create a sinking Titanic to see if I could recreate that. Okay. I like studying failure like that. It's forensics in me, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, I take this lit up arrow and I poke the balloon. And now, of course, the balloon can't move because I'm holding it there. And it literally, well, let's put it this way.
Blowtorch.
Here's what I remember. Okay. Here's the part I remember. I remember watching the balloon go and start to open. And the last thing I saw was this orange ball of light that was
orange
so bright.
Light, yeah.
And I remember feeling this like wave of heat across my face. And then I'm looking up. And my head hurts because I hit my head on the ground. And I'm and I still have the flaming arrow in my hand. Stick it up. Okay. It's like, what the? I'm like, wow. And I get
How
up.
we do it in the eyelash and the eyebrow department.
Oh, those are burned off.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. My eyelashes, I didn't notice it. My eyebrows were burned more than the eyelashes. And I recall that the hair up here on my head was sort of singed and had the little tiny round balls on the end of my hair.
Yeah, smells like a chicken.
Yeah,
feathers on fire.
Yeah, it's just terrible. And so I ended up thinking, okay, let me reconstruct what happened. Why don't I remember what the boom? There should have been a big boom. It's like Marvin the Martian in Bugs Bunny. Where's the kaboom? There should have been an earth-shattering kaboom. Remember? Well, I didn't get the kaboom. So I figured out what was wrong. What happened was it was so loud that I didn't hear it. It's like my ears shut down. So I got a longer stick this next time because while I'm making one balloon, you gotta understand, I've got
50 feet
more. Yeah, well, 60 feet away. Okay, I've got my hydrogen still going, and I've got another two pair of balloons out there. One pair of balloons actually on them going, so they're building. So I had an assembly line of these suckers, and I could do 6 per my father's 3 clothing bags because what I would do is I would cut them in half and make one out of each, and I would tape the bottom with just Scotch tape and hope it was enough, and it was.
Absolutely.
Hydrogen is the most buoyant gas. I didn't know that then. I just knew it was very buoyant. It lifts stuff up. So it's like a bubble in water. So I ended up making this second balloon, and this time I got a branch. Okay, now here's the hard part. I had to dip the end of the branch in gas.
Of course.
And then I had to go light the end of it and then run to the other end to pick it up and move it to the balloon. And by the time I did that, the branch would go out. So I had to put another tape wad on the end to make a torch like in Indiana Jones, right?
Yes.
Because we've seen that in Laurel and Abbott and Costello movies, Meet the Mummy. He's got these torches, and I'll make one of those. Okay. Yeah. So I did it with a big branch, and that worked. So now it's burning, and the only consequence is it didn't want to go out. But I would walk up to the balloon, and it was probably 20 feet, maybe. Of course, those are kid values, probably more like 10 feet in reality. Okay. And I touched the tethered balloon, and I got the kawoomp I was looking for. I got hit in the chest with this shockwave. It was like, it was deep, loud bass rumble. It hit me in the chest, knocked me back, but not down. I felt the hot wind, on my face. And you saw this little mini mushroom cloud go up from where the balloon used to be.
Nice.
Fire. And I was like,
what a satisfying experience.
Oh, not only that, I think I yelled at the top of my lungs, this is for me. And then I quickly realized the cops were coming, Peter, and I had to quickly now ditch everything. I had to hide the tether, put out the branch, move it to the side so it didn't look obvious. And then I ran in the backyard, and I came out with a basketball bouncing down the driveway. Cops already rolling by. Hi. And the cop rolls his window down and says, Did you hear any loud booms? No. Okay. Bye.
So, a quick question. That evening of this scientific breakthrough, you look a little different. Hairless on the face and
You want to know
maybe a
what my
little.
mother said?
Yeah.
Well, first of all,
Too much time out in the sun.
yeah, my mother actually, I combed out the hair and got rid of the little melted
Yeah, good
ends.
move. Good move.
Yeah, and then I went like this on my eyebrows. Okay, and when I went back, I know, oh, they're patchwork. They're half here and half not.
Oh, dear.
So you know what I did? I had black hair. I took a black magic marker and just drew them in, and she didn't notice. So she never noticed that I lost my eyelashes. I mean, there was some there, but some not. So it was sparse. So I rubbed off the little round dots at the end of the eyelashes where it would melted, and I just drew in with a little marker. That was one of those. I think it was like Marks a Lot was the name, and so it was a big fat marker. So I stood in the bathroom with the point of this scallop marker head, and I went. And it looked good.
How old were you when you got your first telescope?
I asked for it when I was 9, and I got it at 10. 11 was when the hydrogen balloons started to happen, and when I started to really invest my time in science. And I was a kid, though, Peter. I was a kid, So you can't blame me for these journeys of adventure now.
No, I can match them with equally upon, some perspective. Adult supervision would have been advisable.
Yeah, I just would have been so bored. But you know what? I will say that my parents did get me a chemistry set because I did ask for the chemistry set around the same time that I was talking to my father about giving me the bags for the hydrogen balloons. And they got me a chemistry set. Now, back then...
That's great. Gilbert?
Yes, and back then, the Gilbert Scientific Chemistry Set was a metal case.
Oh, yeah.
You opened it up, and you had these two sides.
Yeah.
And you get all these chemicals. The jars were this big and that wide. They were big.
I remember.
And they had real stuff in them, not baby stuff.
Stuff
like
that
today.
They won't put in little jars for children now.
I made gunpowder. Okay? I made my own firecrackers. I was investigating ancient Chinese science.
There we go.
Well, anyway.
Give that boy an A.
Not only that, okay, when I ran out of those chemicals, which I did very quickly, as you can imagine, I went to the local pharmacy. And Paul at Appel's drugstore in Plainville, Connecticut, was in the back as a pharmacist. And I went back and I said, Paul, I'm trying to make gunpowder. Can you give me the chemicals to make gunpowder? And he looked at me and said, you're going to be careful, right? Yes, I will. Okay, I'll be right back. And he got this little paper bag. And he filled it with the 3 different chemicals I was going to use as a basis for gunpowder. And he looked at me and says, you have any carbon? I go, I got plenty of carbon. Because I had already ground up my parents' charcoal briquettes that were burned and wood. So I ended up making gunpowder, and the pharmacy back then would supply you with everything you needed. They were they were a chemical outlet, man.
It was another America. And it's amazing how rarely things went terribly wrong.
I know. I
look at myself as a 13-year-old who looked like he was pushing 9 with my .22 caliber rifle in its imitation leather case in my snap rack, a couple of 100 rounds in my pocket, pedaling my way to the recreation center to vaporize targets all afternoon. Bullets cost about 3 cents each. And then riding home with my rifle across the back of my bicycle, as one sees every day in America now.
Wow.
And nothing ever went wrong.
In the basement of the high school in Bristol, Connecticut, I went to Plainville High School, not Bristol High School, but in the basement of Bristol High School, students belonged to shooting clubs.
Oh, yeah.
And they went into the basement and shot at targets in the school with their guns.
with lead lingering in the air, and we had the same thing in our recreation center. It's
Unbelievable.
more innocent time, but again, the zen of hitting the target, knowing as young people that this is kind of an award for responsibility.
Oh, yes.
Knowing how to take pride in being a rational person and like operating a power tool without.
Yeah.
And again, I guess things have changed so much that is not possible in a mass society.
No, that's okay. I don't mind that.
Changes. By the time you got out of high school, were you already thinking in terms of going into astronomy as a professional? Because, that's like saying what I did. I'm going to be an artist. Yeah, right. Or a rock and roll singer. An astronomer? Really?
Yeah, well, people say, what's astronomer? No, astronomer. Oh, astrologer. No, if you want me to do it, if you want your palm red, I'll get the red paint. Okay.
You knew you wanted a life in science, but
I knew I was going to be an astronomer when I started looking up in the sky and thinking that something was looking back at me.
Okay.
And so at age 9, Peter, I became an astronomer in my head.
Yep.
And I wavered slightly to go into oceanography for a bit. I thought maybe the deep ocean has clues to life on the Earth, and it does. As we found with the hydrothermal vents at the Juan de Fuca Ridge off Oregon and so forth, Mid-Atlantic Ridge. Okay, very important stuff because we found those in the solar system under Saturn's moon Enceladus.
Yeah.
Okay, we find them at Europa, around Jupiter, a moon of Jupiter. So these are very important to understanding life and where it comes from. So for a while, I was going to go into oceanography because we came from the ocean. Okay,
it's just also a terribly fascinating field.
It is, and you have a vestigial ocean within you. It's the salt content within your body. We have a love affair with sodium, and the ocean became naturally salty because when it was just rocks on the Earth and there was rains, which is what could happen here, not on Venus, okay, because it was too hot for the raindrops to actually form, okay. The water striking the rock surface could dislodge sodium atoms very easily, and chlorine atoms that are bound with other compounds could dislodge very easily, and they ended up mixing in the water. And sodium and chlorine have a love affair because one has an extra electron that it doesn't need, and chlorine, or the other, has a need for an electron. So they make this bond and form NaCl, which is salt. And that's now in your body. So you have a love affair with that because of your original origin in the ocean. Now, it's a much lower percentage in the ocean, of course.
Yeah.
But still, so you see, it all connects. Yeah. So for a while, I was going to do oceanography, and I really was thinking that's a great idea, but I couldn't shake that there was something out there that I needed to see.
Let me stop you for a moment here, Mark, and ask you, at this point in your life, have you had another or any other totally non-standard kind of missing time or related experiences like when you were young?
Yes, and that's another thing that hard to deal with sometimes, but I did have what I think may have been an implant in this sinus. I remember 3 nights terrifying in my old house. It's the reason I moved out of the house. Okay, I couldn't stay there any longer. And that, by the way, that house is exactly, not plus or minus an inch, exactly 5,280 feet from this house, 1 exact mile. Kind of interesting. Okay, and it's that way as I'm talking to you right now. Okay, and it was number 13 Oak Street in Terryville, Connecticut. Okay,
that was really the reason.
Yeah, and the thing was, and this. Well, you wake up in the middle of the night, okay, and you say, "What time is it?" You look over at the clock; it's 3:15 a.m. Then all of a sudden, you hear, "What the heck?" Just like that, a space, and then 3 sets of 3 knocks, and it's coming from my roof. Now, at the time, I had greyhound dogs that I rescued from the track. I was big into that. I felt that they needed a second chance because it's a horrible industry.
Yeah.
So I was like, huh. And I went, the first night I just rolled back over, went to bed. Next day I got up, took a shower, went to work, came home, went to bed again afterwards. Woke up again in the middle of the night. I rolled over, look at the clock. It's 3:15 a.m. It's like, what the heck? Oh no. Here it is again. What's going on here? Just like this. And this time I get up.
How old are you at this time?
This was about 23 years ago.
Thanks. Continue on.
I was right there, like I said. And so this time I got up and went around the bed. Okay. And the greyhounds, Tycho and Kepler, astronomers' dogs, were sleeping under that open window. And the screen was in the window. And they're looking up at the sound. What the heck is that? And they're looking up too. And I lean over them and grab the windowsill. I push my face against the screen. I try to look up to see if it's a mentally handicapped woodpecker trying to get bugs out of a vinyl-sided house. Okay? But I couldn't tell what kind of knock it was. You know, it was a weird sound. It's unlike not knocking on wood, not knocking on vinyl. It was not metal.
Yeah.
It was a different type. It was almost a weird. It was visceral. I couldn't explain it. It was inside and it was in my ears. I don't know how to say it. But anyway, as soon as I pressed my face against the window and looked up, it was like, poof, I got hit in the face with a bright white light. And I just froze there. And I'm looking around and I can't see. I'm completely blind. And I look out and I can start to see a distant street light, the one and only light that I could see, slowly bleeding in with its detail coming back ever so slowly.
Sure. I
was flash blinded. It was like a bright flash of light hit me in the face. Yep. And I waited for it to come back. And it came back remarkably fast. And when it came back, I pushed away and looked down because I was leaning over the dogs, remember? Both of them, Tycho and Kepler, on their individual little blue beds. Okay? Well, not so little. They're big dogs. And they were both gone. I was like, oh, what the heck? So I pushed away and I'm looking. I'm like, Tycho, Kepler, where are you? I opened the closet. Tycho's inside the closet. Okay, one half of the closet door he pushed open. He's in a laundry pile hiding.
Oh.
Okay. And I'm going, Tycho, what's going on? I grab him by his collar. He's like, he doesn't want to come out. So I just leave him there. And I go, where's Kepler? Is she in here? And I look, no, she's not here. I go to walk out of the room. There she is. She's right outside the room on all fours like this, with her head down, ears back, low profile. Now, from that night forward, the dogs never slept under that window again. I had to move their beds for them to sleep in that room. Then they moved to another place in the room. Now, the third night comes along. All right. Now, in that second night, it merits telling. My wife slept through all of this. And she was to my right side here in the bed. Mm-hmm. After that, and that's why I was whispering, Tycho, where are you? You know, where are the dogs? When I came back, I actually shoved her. And she goes, what are you doing? And I said, just remember that I shoved you, okay? Remember that. Because I got to tell you about something that happened. Whatever, go to bed. All right, so I went to bed. Next morning, I got up. I completely forgot about what happened the night before. And downstairs, I'm getting ready. I get all ready. I go to leave, and she hits me. Poof. She goes, why did you wake me up last night? And it was like, whoa. It all came back in an instant. And then I couldn't stop talking. Oh, this thing, the light, the dogs, Tycho was in the laundry, blah, blah, blah. There's a knocking. I couldn't tell what it was, blah, blah, blah.
What was your wife's response?
I'll tell you. She goes, you're crazy. Go to work. Okay. So I went to work. That was the second night. Now the third night, I wake up again. And I'm thinking, oh, what's going on? Why can't I sleep through the night? And I go to turn my head to look at the clock. I can't move my head. My head's frozen. Here, what? So I try to unconsciously move my eyes. My eyes won't move. They're stuck looking this way. And I can't do this. I can't look to the right. I can't move my eyes at all. They're fixed and frozen. And I'm thinking, oh no, was this like a medical event last night?
Yeah.
What's going on? How come? What's going on? I can't do anything. What's going on? Yeah. And then I saw in my peripheral vision where that street light was making a very, very tiny frame of the window on the right side of the room. You could actually see it illuminating. I saw something pass right in front of that. It went right in front of the window from my point. And I couldn't look at it. And I couldn't move my eyes to look at it. I could only look straight ahead. And then something over there, and this is how I remember it, because I'm looking here, because that's where I had to look. Something over here was moving toward me. And you can't look at it, okay? You're stuck. And it extends what looks like a wand that was like a magician's wand.
Yeah.
That was white and translucent and glowing soft white. And it was doing this. Now, I couldn't look at it, but I could see the hand in my peripheral vision. It looked gray, but that's now you're only using the rods at the edge of your retina, so it tends to show only black and white things.
Especially that time.
The hands look gray.
Yeah.
Okay. But and it didn't look like a real hand. It looked like it was two fingers were big and fat, kind of more like this.
Huh.
Okay. So it was kind of like that. And it was going like this. Under my nose, back and forth like this. I could see the thing just barely. I could see the glow. Okay. And then I felt this searing pain. And the next thing you know, it was morning and I was on my belly and I couldn't breathe. And I pushed off the bed to see that I was sleeping exactly face down. Who sleeps face down? No one sleeps face down. Not into the pillow. If you want to die,
right. Your head would be to the side.
Yes. So I pushed off the pillow to see that the reason I couldn't breathe was I was trying to inhale my own blood. The pillow was filled. There was a concavity that was filled with my blood. And my face felt like I had been through like an accident, right? This side of my face felt like I got punched really hard. I couldn't feel any swelling. I quickly went into the bathroom, turned on the light, struggled with my eyes.
Blood coming out of one or both nostrils?
This one right here. This is my left one. And and that's where it was coming out of. And I noticed that this side of my face wasn't swollen, nor was this one. So I was just bleeding. What's going on? So after that, I took a shower, cleaned up, and did what anyone would do after having such a traumatic thing. I forgot about it and went to work.
Of course. Yeah.
Yeah. And it took me, and by the way, from that point forward, from that bloody incident, this sinus was completely blocked.
Oh, for gosh sakes.
Couldn't breathe out of it. So I ended up, going to work, and for 2 years, I dealt with this being fully blocked. Then I realized every time I thought of going to the doctor, something in my head said, no, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. And that's human nature. It's a hassle. Don't do it. Right. So it could have been that, right? Well, then I finally did call the doctor.
Good.
At Hartford Hospital in the ear, nose,
ENT.
and throat doctor. Yeah, ENT, Dr. Lehman. It's all public record. Everything I'm telling you is public record.
Yeah.
And Dr. Lehman said he could see me. I went in, and you fill out the intake sheet, that says why you're here today, what's your problem, blah, blah, blah. So I did. But, me being the way I am, I'm always happy about everything. I drew little cartoons on it, I told him I'm always pregnant, always nursing, even though I'm a guy. Yeah, I did all those funny things. Then underneath my occupation, I said, I'm a model maker, and I don't say like astronomy because back then I wasn't a professional astronomer at that time. So I was, but I wasn't doing it as my job. I was in computer science at the time. Well, anyway, so he looks and looks up there and he says, wow, he says, you've got something huge up there. Oh, and he says, how long has that been there? About 2 years. 2 years? Why didn't you call earlier? I couldn't answer that. I was like, I guess I just lived with it. No. He says, I think we can get it out. So we set up a procedure. He went up there. Everything was numbed. Okay. It's really weird if you've never had your nose and throat numbed by this stuff they spray up there.
Yeah.
It's almost like you feel like you can't breathe, but of course you breathe better. You just don't know you are. It's weird. So anyway, he took this thing out. He was able to pull it out, and it was this big. It's the size of my 2 thumbs stacked. What? Okay. Yeah, like that. See my 2 thumbs stacked?
Yeah.
That's how big it was, and it came out through that little hole.
Shit.
Yeah. And it was like Arnold Schwarzenegger. I always say this in Total Recall, where he goes, get it out, pull it out. Yeah. And he pulls this thing out of his nose. Okay. That's how it felt. And that thing came out and he looked at it and he goes, and he said, doctor said, holy crap. He says, if that's a polyp, it's the biggest one I've ever seen in a sinus. And I went, okay, well, can I have it? And he's like, no. We're going to send this down to pathology, make sure it's benign. But it looks and acts like a polyp, but we're going to have to see. And then he goes, how did you remember the event where did you sneeze hard or something and something happened?
Oh boy.
And I explained to him what I just told you about the 3 nights of stuff.
Yeah.
And I was kind of laughing, keeping it lighthearted, Yeah. And he said, he goes, I'm sure it wasn't aliens. I go, of course not. That's stupid.
Sure.
Yeah. And he says, call me in a week. I'll let you know what we find. He says, but I really think it's probably benign. Okay. So a week later, I call. Hi, this is Mark calling for Dr. Oh, hold on. Dr. Lehman has to talk to you. I went, oh, boy. And I'm afraid he's going to tell me I have like head cancer in my head.
Totally. You're dying.
Yeah. Hi, Mr. D'Antonio. Your head's going to fall off. No. But he came on. He says, hi, Mr. D'Antonio. I just want to let you know it's probably benign. Nothing to worry about, okay?
Probably.
You caught it. You caught that. And I said, too, oh, you didn't get the results from pathology yet? And he goes, well...
Yes, but I don't want to tell you.
No, it was more like, yeah, well, I just got to be honest with you. This is the first time this has ever happened in my practice in any whatever years, if in number of 38, 42 years, whatever he said. He said, but we sent it to pathology.
It went missing.
And now it's missing. They can't find it.
Fuck.
Okay. So.
Really?
Yeah. So I just played it cool. I said, okay, as long as you think it's benign. Oh, yeah, benign. No problem. Okay. Well, since he took it out, I would often get these stabbing, burning pains in there and then hear a high-pitched whine in my head, and it was like a circuit was trying to be completed and it couldn't be made complete. And so it was burning something in there. And it would literally completely debilitate me for the 10, 20 seconds it was occurring. If I was driving, if I didn't pull over, I'd be in an accident.
God.
Oh, it shut my eyes. It was so painful.
Yeah.
I wanted to dig out the bone structure of my skull to get at it. Well, anyway, it was 2 years later when I had to go back to him for something else. Okay. And I was still getting those stabbing pains. Didn't even bother to tell him about it because I didn't want to go down that path again. I went to him for something else. And this time on the intake sheet, I did all the same silly things I did before because medical assistants, it's their job, read these things. And my wife was a medical assistant, so I knew how boring it can get. So I'm always Mr. Comedy, I guess. So on the occupation section where it says, what do you do for a living? Well, this time, I didn't say that I do model work. I said, this is true, I do special projects for the U.S. Navy. Now, that to anyone in the know means that I must do work that is kind of black project stuff, and I have been for decades. Okay, so that was what my FX Models company started as, was a defense company to make engineering models of future submarine concepts. See, I got into oceanography after all, because now every time I make models, I've got 6 of them building now in my shop for the Navy. Every time I do stuff, it's going to be an underwater project. So I wrote on there that I do special projects for the Navy, and that's all I said. He comes in and he goes, he looking at the intake sheet. He goes, my medical assistants love you. I said, Jody, my wife, is a medical assistant, so she's relayed to me what it's like reading these things, blah, blah, blah. He goes, yeah, well, they love you. I said, that's good. He says, so you do special projects for the Navy, huh? I go, yeah, I've been doing this kind of work for several decades now. At that point, it was several decades. And no, at that point, it was a decade and a half, maybe. Well, anyway, So he does something I never saw a doctor do before. I'm on the exam table, sitting sideways on the exam table, right? The long table with the paper on it. Every time you move it, the wrinkles the paper. He gets up on the exam table right next to me. He sits on it.
Hold that thought. Believe it or not, we are done with our first hour. What a perfect place. No one is going to leave. See you in 5 minutes, folks. It's just the way it happened.
Exactly. You think I planned it.
And this is one of the reasons I love live radio, because here we are.
Yep.
Again, Peter Robbins, my special guest, Marc D'Antonio. The show is Meanwhile Here on Earth. We'll be back at the top of the hour.
The new book, How to Research a Haunted House by paranormal investigator Margie Kay and professional researcher Violet Wisdom, is now available from Unex Media. This one-of-a-kind book explains how to do research on a house with uncommon methods and resources used by historic home researchers, and how to determine who may be doing the haunting and why. How to research a haunted house can be used by homeowners, renters, investors, and it should be in the library of all professional paranormal investigators. Get this unique book at unexmedia.com or amazon.com. That's unexmedia.com or amazon.com.
If you want something fun to do with the family this summer, listen up. It's the ultimate celebration of the iconic sci-fi universes that have captured people's imaginations for generations. And it's taking place in Bonne Terre, Missouri. Special guests include a NASA astronaut, Disney artist, YouTube content creator, and characters from the Star Wars universe, also robots and world-class model builders. The Space Museum and Grissom Center in Bonne Terre presents its latest installment of Show Me Space 2025 with Show Me Sci-Fi Space on Saturday, June 28 from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. The Space Museum and Grissom Center is located at 118 East School Street in Bonne Terre. Call 573-358-1200 or visit space-mo.org. That's space-mo.org.
The Unex Network presents a health and wellness spiritually based brand of hemp-derived CBD products made by Hopewell Farm in Harrogate, Tennessee. We apply our Cathara energy work with all of our plants and products. Our products made in small batches with only 2 ingredients of pure hemp, full spectrum crude oil, and coconut-derived MCT oil. Third-party lab tested for potency and legal THC levels with 6 strengths of 1 ounce oil to choose from. Know what you're buying and get what you pay for from Hopewell Farm. Applied directly to a specific area, Hopewell Farm topical salve in 1 ounce and ½ ounce sizes made with pure hemp crude oil, comfrey extract, and all natural ingredients. Find the Hopewell Farm link and coupon code on the Unex Network website at unexnetwork.com. That's unexnetwork.com.
And we are back. Meanwhile, Here on Earth is the show. My name is Peter Robbins, and my special guest, Marc D'Antonio, astronomer, among other things. And We have his live stream logo there, but no Mark. I guess he was speaking about something that he shouldn't have been speaking about before the break, and we've seen the last of him. Or not. Before Mark comes back on, just want to show you a photo of Mark demonstrating the length of time in the history of time. The first time I ever saw Mark lecture was at the Exeter, New Hampshire UFO conference. Happens every year at Labor Day weekend. And it was not a gimmick as much as a remarkable device to enroll everybody in the audience in seeing this demonstration using a roll of toilet paper. Mark, Race, can you add Mark? He is not my... Yes, I see you.
Peter, he's added, brother, but you've got his image.
The image you got to take down.
Oh, don't mind me. Right. As I was saying before, I was so rudely interrupted by my ridiculous error. The first time I saw you speak, you did that wonderful demonstration on using a roll of common toilet paper to illustrate the history of the length of time.
Yes.
With special note for how long we've been part of it. As you did the demonstration, after the initial novelty started to wear off and the tittering in the audience and stretching out, it occurred to me, everybody should have had a science teacher like you. Everyone in that room, whatever their age, we were with you. And it was totally engaging from start to finish. I have to ask you to start with, did you hit on that yourself as a teacher, or where did you just come up with that prop as a device?
I had seen similar things done before, and I wanted to do it for the Earth's history, because one of the things that's interesting is when you ask people when did dinosaurs die off, they say, millions and millions of years ago, a long, long time ago, way back at the beginning of time. You often hear, way back when Earth was formed and dinosaurs ruled the Earth, then they died off, and then we came along millions and millions and millions of years later. All that is true, but the scale is all screwed up in their minds. I wanted to show them the scale, and so I started with a real roll of toilet paper the first time. And when I would pull it out, I said, I have a very high-tech prop, and I had my backpack there. I said, a very high-tech prop here, very sensitive, so we got to be careful.
Oh, right. You learn very quickly that it tends to separate from each other.
Well, I actually corrected that because I put shipping tape all the way down the entire length of the roll. I have no life, Peter. I just sat there for 5 hours creating this dang thing. Okay. And so they couldn't pull it apart. All right. But what I did was when I took it out, I said, now, here it is. It's a roll of toilet paper. And it's well used. I've used this many times before. And of course, the audience groans.
Ew. Continue on.
Not that way. Well, real toilet paper. Yeah, brumpa. Real toilet paper gave way to using a 4-inch wide, 120-foot long roll of what is it? Curtain backing material.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Okay. Because it looks like toilet paper, acts like toilet paper, but doesn't break like toilet paper, doesn't fray, doesn't do all those nasty things. Because some of my sheets of the real toilet paper was just the shipping tape left. And then you had toilet paper again. And it's like, no, that's not good. What happened there? Well, we went to a black hole for that period of time. I don't know. No. So I ended up doing it. But the point being is this. It's 117 feet, 300 and so 300 sheets of toilet paper, basically 4-inch sheets. Each sheet corresponds to something like 14 million years. I have to go back and see exactly.
Wow. Okay.
And when you unroll it, you go. I literally went. I did this down at the Ozark in Arkansas,
You did
So,
it in the auditorium at the Exeter, New Hampshire
yeah,
town hall.
I did. I did it in Leominster, Massachusetts. I did it around the country. Okay. And the thing was, when people talk about me, they say, "Hey, it's the toilet paper astronomer." Yeah. Okay. Okay. No, but the thing that's really interesting here is that out of that 117 feet overall, 300 sheets roughly, right? The very, very last sheet is where we are, of course. And at the end of that very, very last sheet is a line the width of a human hair. It's drawn on there. Because as I said, I have no life. I drew it on there. Okay. And so I thought as I started doing this, that this would be easy. I get to the end now, and I'll tell you about the rest in a sec. That hairline, that represents us in the room right now. Lucy, 4.2 million years ago, is just about that far back from us on that 117 feet. Okay. That's Lucy, Australopithecus afarensis. Okay. Only that far back on that sheet of paper, a sheet of toilet paper, 4-inch paper. Dinosaurs died 18 inches earlier. Okay. On that scale. 18 inches out of 117 feet.
And a width of a human hair.
The width of a human hair is everything we've ever known, ever done, ever have postulated, ever have dreamed about, is all within that human hair at the very end.
You really
isn't that cool?
Made the point wonderfully. The Rose Planetarium at the Museum of Natural History, has that wonderful wraparound exhibit also that illustrates very much the same thing using 3/4 of a city block, as I recall. But I kind of completely disrupted where we were with my bumpy introduction. Namely, I was saying to myself, I have never had a physician or a medical personnel of any sort that I'm seeing sit down on the little table with the paper next to me. What transpired?
Yeah. So, brief recap. I walked in and I had filled out that I do special projects for the Navy. Now, this is 2 years after he pulled that thing out of my nose. So I sat down at the exam table like I normally do. And no, not wearing the Johnny coat thing or whatever. I'm just normal clothes. And he comes in and he says, "Oh, special projects, huh?" I go, "Yeah." He goes, he looks at me and he goes, "I just gave up my top secret clearance this year." I went, "What?" And then he sat down next to me on the table, crossed his legs, hands at his sides, looking out the window at the other buildings in the city of Hartford. And he's rocking his legs like we're two kids sitting on a cliff overlooking a pond, just talking. He goes, "I wasn't always a surgeon, And he proceeded to tell me how he was in a project where they launched a nuclear weapon up into space to use the EMP pulse to take out another satellite, an enemy satellite. And it was blazingly successful. I know that project. And it was Project Starfish. And I thought, I couldn't remember the name at the time, but I knew there was a project where they did that in the ionosphere. And in fact, as a kid, getting my being part of the astronomy book club, I got a book which talked about Honolulu being lit up to daytime briefly by this ionospheric nuclear bomb explosion. And they said ostensibly the test was to show what happens in the upper atmosphere when a nuclear weapon goes off. Well, nuclear weapons don't go off in the upper ionosphere. What the heck?
We have to be involved.
Yeah, they go off low in the atmosphere to do the damage. But what he told me was, he said to me, the doctor said, I had a fairly major role in that project, and I've retained my clearance to do work for them. I guess he was dying to tell somebody that, And, now he's talking to someone who has the same clearance level.
Yeah.
Okay. And he just felt like bringing that out.
How interesting.
Yeah, but that's illegal. You should never have done that. Okay. Because I wasn't read into that program. I had no business knowing any of that.
Wow.
Well, now it's out in the open, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, I said, but you killed an enemy satellite at altitude with a nuclear weapon. He goes, yeah, with the electromagnetic pulse. I went, how could you get away with that? You know, and he goes, that's why, he said this kind of proudly, that's why we cleared the Pacific for 1,600 miles in every direction around the atoll where we sent it up.
Holy shit.
Oh, okay.
That's
Wow.
power.
Yeah. So the bottom line is, it's legal if no one sees us do it. Okay. Now, keep in mind that that was my introduction to space-based types of things that we do. And as an astronomer, I've always been very concerned with filling space with all kinds of satellites and dead rocket bodies that will make it harder for us to actually get there. Okay, we can actually put so many things up there that it's not easy to navigate to Earth orbit without hitting something.
I was going to say, from the time, that we were kids and there was nothing up there except what was natural, to now, we know there are tens of thousands of sharp little objects from, well, probably even more now, fragments of things that have smashed into each other, and old parts of space missions from us and the Russians and whomever. And it's getting to be like that, well, not quite like that part of the Pacific Ocean as big as Texas that's pure plastic, but we have a remarkable ability to...
It's not the Pacific garbage gyre. It's not that. Okay. But it is, we do have a lot of stuff up there. And it's, keep in mind that space is big. Okay. So I know you're thinking of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy and Douglas Adams, space is big. Yes. It's unimaginably big. Okay. Anyway, but there could be a potential that we put up enough low orbit objects that it could make it hazardous for us. It's always hazardous anyway, but could make it hazardous for us to get to Earth orbit. As it is, every time the shuttle came back, inspections of the shuttle windows did show pits and scars from hits by micrometeorites and things like that, either attained on orbit or during reentry. So you are going to get some things happening. And orbit is a ballet. Okay, it's a controlled fall. Right, you go horizontally as fast as Earth's gravity is trying to pull you down. So the result is you travel in a circle around the planet. You're going this way as fast as Earth is trying to pull you that way. So you end up going in a nice, beautiful circle. That's a circular orbit. And so you're traveling at a speed based on the altitude of your orbit. The farther out you are, the slower you need to move. Pluto moves very slowly around the sun, over 200 years to go around the sun once. Mercury, closest to the sun, goes around the sun once in 88 days to travel in their circles around the sun. So the farther out you are, the slower you move from the Earth, right? When you're traveling as a satellite. So the International Space Station travels 17,500 miles per hour. That's how fast it's moving. When you see it pass in front of the moon, it goes like this. And it's at 252 miles or so over your head. So, in other words, the point being, these things move fast. So if they hit anything, they're going to travel through the entire structure in a few milliseconds.
That's bad.
Yeah, we'd say that. That's no understatement. Yeah, no understatement. Yeah. So anyway, going back to the doctor, I discovered then and there that now I know what happened to the sample. Because he said he was doing this work for the Navy and just gave up his TS clearance. I know what happened. Because when you're in this organization, when you're in this area of work, you're bound by law to report anything that you think could possibly be a national security breach or note of interest that national security might be interested in.
Yes.
So I'm sure he got on the phone and called down to his handler in Washington because he still had his clearance. And the first thing he gave him was his name and then gave him something called a cage code. 012 Charlie 0. That was my cage code. You never forget it. It's like a social security number. So you give you give that cage code and your name, and now they access your file. They know everything about you. So then the guy on the other line probably said, okay, what do you got? Tell us what's happening. And he probably said, I'm surmising all this. Well, I had a patient come in. He said he had a strange visitation over a period of evenings where something was apparently stuck up into his sinus. I examined the patient, and there was a finding, and I removed the object, and it's now in our pathology department here at Hartford Hospital in Hartford, Connecticut. Okay, thank you very much, doctor. You're welcome. Bye-bye. Bye. And that's the end of it.
Yeah.
Now, under polygraph, if asked, he could say and not lie that he has no idea where it went. Under polygraph, he could say and not lie that he has no idea who took it.
Yeah.
This is plausible deniability. He has the ability to basically be free and clear.
Yeah.
And he doesn't really know where it went. Neither do I. But that's the way it works. That's how that works in when you do that kind of work, you know. And for the record, I gave up that life about 9.5 years ago. It's too invasive.
I expect so.
Yeah. They could come into your house any time of the day or night to do inspections. And heaven forbid they find anything. I was doing a submarine project for the President of the United States. Okay, it was for the Joint Chiefs, and it was going to be delivered. I was a little nervous about it, but I had electrical work done here. Well, I had more electrical work done than I realized. And when they did an inspection, they discovered that. And that put me on not a naughty list, but it put me on a watch list, meaning not for me, but as far as what I was going to say in that space, I had to not talk in that space, and I had to only do the work and not talk about this stuff anymore. I had to make sure that any materials on computers that was not in that classification, I still had to remove and put and store elsewhere, which I did. Real pain. But look, I didn't know about the electrical people coming in here to put in this stuff. And the guy that installed my electrical is a good friend. I was just at his house the other day, but he's not the guy that did it. When he ordered the stuff from my house, it was installed somewhere off site, and he just unwittingly installed it. He didn't know what was inside this electrical outlet. He had no idea. He just installed the outlet like he always does.
Yeah. So
that stuff happens. That's stuff that really happens. Isn't that crazy?
It's wild.
Yeah. So that's the one and only time that's ever happened, but I do have some hair curling stories about other things, but that's in that arena, not in the paranormal or UFO arena.
One of the things, Mark, that I always find so engaging about you is you are a pragmatist, you're a realist, you're a scientist. You're not a new age mystical hocus pocusy person, but you have had things that have happened to you and certainly to people that you know and who you take seriously that violate basically all the rules and all the laws that we've
That's
come
true.
to know in the world of physics and the like. You had an experience, and it was after we became friends. You almost died, and you were in coma for an extended period of time, and very much living your life and remembering it during that period of time. And you spoke about it, after to a number of us. I wonder if you wouldn't mind sharing some of that experience with our viewers, because, again, to have somebody with your very pragmatic attitude and outlook relate what actually happened to you, for some people will feel or sound just exaggerated or science fiction-y, but it's not. These things happen. And it has to do with human consciousness and
It does, yeah.
surviving. And can you take us back to what went wrong and where your life was at that moment? This is about, is it 15 years ago, a dozen years ago?
10.
10, okay.
10 this past May. May 30th. I ended up with 2 infected heart valves. I ended up with endocarditis, and I had to be I had to give myself my own IV through a what's called a PICC line. And so I had to inject myself with this very toxic killer drug that would get rid of the bacteria that were forming on my heart valves. And that was successful. However, the pulmonary valve, the pulmonic valve on this side of the heart, okay, had an abscess. So a hole was forming in the wall right near the leaflets of this valve. And the interval in the valve was actually growing longer and longer, and it's called the PV interval. And I had to get it taken care of quickly. So they put me in an ambulance and sent me down to Manhattan, to your neck of the woods. And I ended up at Mount Sinai with amazing surgeon, Paul Stelzer. Okay. And he was able to repair this. And they were having trouble getting the heart restarted. And during the time my heart was stopped, I remember 3.5 hours of being taken out of the hospital and taken to New Mexico. Now, could this have been just a hallucinogenic dream? Yeah, maybe. However, they were by people that were Native American ancestors. Now, my mother was Passamaquoddy Native American and Irish. And these were Navajo. And I could hear the woman speaking. There was a woman and a guy, a young kid. I could draw his face. It was as real as talking to you right now. Okay. Except even more real because they were there in 3 dimensions. You're just a 2-dimensional projection on the screen.
Right.
Okay. Well, anyway, they told me that I have to follow their lead. I was like, I'll be honest with you. I was not kind to them until the very end when I kind of sort of realized what was going on. I felt I was abducted out of Mount Sinai's.
Oh, gosh.
And I thought I really was. I remember being wheeled on a gurney outside the hospital, being hidden in an area and placed in a vehicle and whisked away. Then I was out cold, and then I was in New Mexico. So it's like, oh, you put me in a plane? I got to be in the surgery. What the hell are you doing? Are you guys nuts? You MFers. I mean, I was swearing up a storm.
Yeah, sure.
Well, anyway, it was a current day modern type of, I guess you could call it a vision quest or something. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
And so they moved me to these different cars. It was 3.5 hours long. Okay. I remember every second of it to this day. I cannot forget this. It's like it's built in. As well as I know I have 10 fingers, I knew every second that happened during that time. Amazing. I can recount it. And it's almost like it's in, you know what it is? I know what it is. It's like it's on a thumb drive in my brain. And I can always get to the thumb drive. It never changes. The data is always there.
Yeah.
And nothing changes about it because I only have that to refer to. So I don't have anything to add to it because I can't add anymore to what's already there. So it's like a read-only thumb drive. Okay. And effectively, that's how we liken this. So you're only getting a short blip, but here's what happened. So they get me out there, and a number of things happen. We go to a number of different places. I remember the scenery. I decide I'm going to remember this because when I get to police, I'm going to tell them I got to call the police and tell them I've been abducted.
Yeah.
Because I thought I was going to die. I thought they were taking me to kill me. And the reason was because at one point they put me in the back of an old gray, primer gray El Camino car.
Oh.
And there was an STP sticker between my feet at the end. Okay. White and red. I remember it very clearly. It was kind of cocked and oval on an angle. There was an empty gas can to my right, and it was clanking around in the bed while they're driving all these dirt roads.
Shades of your youth.
Yeah, and to my left was a crushed Quaker State oil can, blue and or green and white. Okay, and I was memorizing all this because I wanted to report to the police what I saw. And they're driving, and long story short, really short, they stop this vehicle, and it turns just enough. Now I'm a rag doll. I can't do this. I can't move. I can only use my eyes at this point. I can only look around. I can't pick anything up. My arms don't work. My legs don't work. And the woman says something in Navajo. And I said, what the F did she just say? Who the F are you people? And the kid comes over and he's got this look on his face like this all the time. Always got this look. Okay. Almost like he's angry with me, but it was more of furtive. He was actually focused.
Yeah.
And I remember everything about this kid. I remember what he looks like. I could draw his face. He's white and black feathers curled up in hair coming down to little tufts at the bottom. And they were both dangling on either side of his face. I remember his hair. I remember the belt he had. He had a hemp belt, cloth belt with the fibers. Okay. Every detail was very clear. I knew his face, the bone structure. Oh, yes. I had it all down. I could draw him with a police artist. Okay. I thought I wasn't going to have to. Well, I basically asked him, what the hell did she just say? That's a nice way of putting it. And she said, she said it's coming and we have to be ready now. And so she says something like, now, when she said that, this beautiful New Mexican sunset started to turn gray and dark. When I could look just to the upper left of my vision. I could see the beautiful sun. Okay. The beautiful sun out there was now being covered by something amorphous and dark. I didn't know what it was. And as that thing was being covered, I started to think, what the hell is that? An eclipse? Again, it's not an eclipse. It's not right. The timing's all wrong. That isn't right. Then the kid walks over to me and he puts his big stainless steel revolver in my lap. I'm like, what the hell? And I'm looking at the gas can, looking at the revolver. I go, you son of a, you know what? I said, what are you going to kill me here? And the gas is what, to burn the body? What the hell are you doing? And he goes, and that's when the woman said something and he kind of smirked at me. And he goes, she said you're pretty dense. And I went, well, what do you mean? What do you expect? What the hell's happening here? He goes, you're going to use that gun. You're going to shoot that thing in the sky. Okay, we're all going to be shooting at that. You got to shoot it. And I said, very funny. I'm a effing rag doll. I can't move. How am I supposed to grab it? And then he takes my face, he looks at him, and he says, it's symbology. Pay attention. I'm like, what the heck? And so I'm like, whatever. And now I hear gunshots. They're really loud. Bang, 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 bang. Then he turns to me and says, shoot this thing. And so I go, I can't lift it. I was like, bang, bang. And 2 flecks fell away. Whoa. And little pinpoints of sun were showing through. I was like, what the heck? None of this is making any sense to me. I'm a science guy. This stuff doesn't happen to me. And so then I said, bang, 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 and 3 specks fell away. And I said that word more times than I've ever said it in my life in succession. And all these flecks started falling away. They started getting bigger and bigger. And finally, the sun was back. And now the kid comes over, and it's the first time I saw he had teeth. Because now he had this big grin. He puts his arm around me and says, you are going to be all right. Do you know that? I went, what the F just happened? And he goes, and she said it again. And I said, she said, I'm dense again, huh? Yes. And he goes, he says, but you're going to be okay. You realize that? And I actually said, yeah, I think so. For the first time, I realized they were actually there to help me. If this ever happened at all. So anyway, then they start walking away. I never saw the woman. She was always out of my view, but he starts walking away. I could just see him leave, and I go, hey, guys, I'm in a car in the middle of the desert. What the hell? Are you going to bring me back? And now the woman laughs. And he turns around. He says, you really don't get it, do you? He goes, you never left. And bang, I woke up in a coma. And I was in a coma. And I heard them talking about me when I was there alone for the longest time. I couldn't see. I couldn't move. And at first I thought, am I in the morgue? Is this that containment casket in the morgue, with a drawer? But no, I could hear people around me, and I could feel open air. So I knew that it was nearby and that there were people nearby. I couldn't talk because I had a ventilator going. And I remember this neurologist coming in and saying to my family, he was up here and my family was over here. I heard him saying to them, well, we looked at his CAT scan. At best, we think he's going to be a quadriplegic and blind. And my family's gasping. And I'm thinking, you idiot. Don't tell him that. I'm going to be fine, you stupid mother effer. I couldn't say it because I had a tube down there. Okay. But he said that. I was in a coma at this point. 5 days later, when I came out of the coma, the doctor came in and they removed the ventilator in time and I ended up with a trach. Okay. And so I still couldn't talk unless I pushed a little thing and then I could, and get a little bit out. And then, of course, if you can't get air past your vocal cords, nothing comes out, obviously. So you're going, but nothing's happening. Okay. So it's like when you're on mute trying to do a show. Oh, Peter, your trach, cover your trach. It's like that kind of thing. Well, anyway, exactly like now. Exactly. So the point being, the doctor came in and he grabbed my leg and said, can you feel this? And I couldn't talk. I couldn't move my head. And he recognized that. And he goes, well, blink your eyes once for yes and twice for no. And I went, I couldn't feel it. And the two blinks, no. Okay, well, maybe tomorrow. He goes, now, he was a cardiothoracic surgeon. I was an astronomer. Before the surgery, I said, no matter how it turns out, I want you to tell me everything you know and understand I have no fear of this. Okay? And he said, okay, I'll do that. I promise. And he did. He said, and this is where it gets funny. He said, well, we didn't know why you weren't waking up. But it appears that as we were trying to restart your heart, once we got your heart started, okay, and that's the point, by the way, where the Navajo woman was saying it's coming, okay, where you got your heart started, apparently there was a clot in the pulmonary valve, but it went to your brain, and the reason you're still with us is because for some reason it exploded. And you ended up having a bunch of smaller strokes, 8 in total, as it turned out, and not one major one. He said, but that, if you can say that was good, that was the best possible outcome. And now I recognize exactly what happened. That's what the shooting of the gun was, right? You're still muted. Yeah. He just saw it. He gets it now.
It does it by itself. It's frustrating to put it mildly. I'll keep an eye on that thing and make sure it doesn't go red. That is absolutely jaw-dropping.
Yeah, but see, that's the thing. To me, I knew I was going to be fine. I and this isn't patting myself on the back. This isn't saying, oh, I'm so strong. Look at me, I'm so big and not that at all. I actually knew I was going to be okay. I knew when I was profoundly blind and couldn't walk and was a quadriplegic that I was going to get it all back. I knew it. And so I set about in the coma is actually when I realized it, because I said that. The best we think will be a quadriplegic and blind. His visual cortex, the part of the brain that manages sight, is all but gone. It was hit majorly. He's had some cervical vertebrae hit. He's got issues with he may have cognitive issues. We're not sure. And I'm thinking, no, I'm fine, you idiot. Okay. But during that time, I said, okay, I got to figure out how to heal my brain.
Yeah.
Because medical science doesn't want to do it. Okay. And so what I felt at the time was I have to take charge. I don't know any other way around it. So I basically figured out a way. I love the comments here. I figured out a way to engage the primitive brain to heal itself. And even the surgeon wrote me this lengthy letter saying, I'm totally on board. I totally get it. And this is a cardiothoracic surgeon. Okay. The bottom line was this. As I lay in the coma, I figured, what is the brain most good at? The brain is most good at removing the organism from danger, fight or flight.
Yes.
Okay, so I have to appeal to that somehow. Luckily, I knew I could for me, and the reason was because every time someone touched me, if they moved my arms or to like, move the legs to like make sure I don't get bed sores. I was in a coma, right? So they had to keep moving me.
Yeah.
Every time they touched me, it was like I was being touched with hands made of molten lava. It was a sheer agonizing burn every time someone touched me. Yeah. Now, it's an odd issue because I'm laying on a bed and just the sheer contact with the sheets was exceedingly painful. But when someone grabbed and pressed the skin, and then moved it, moved their hands, that was agonizing. I would pass out. In a coma, you can still pass out. Your brain gives up and says, I'm going to sleep. And then it comes back a little later. Well, anyway, I used that pain. And I said, I'm going to use that pain to heal. All right? Because if it's going to hurt that much, if it's going to hurt that much, then I'm going to engage that pain. And I'm going to make the brain feel it all the time until it figures out what to do. All right? So I couldn't see. All right? So they had these things in my eyes initially. When they took them off, I was so grateful that the sheer light coming in, which I could not see, was going to the back of the brain and not getting translated. It was going to the back of the brain and dead ending on a brick wall. And where it dead ended on the brick wall, it caused absolute migraine level burning pain. So when I felt that, I said, this is good, because I'm going to stare at something and I'm going to make my brain hurt and hurt and hurt until it fixes the problem, because it's going to get the organism out of danger. I kept thinking of, put your hand in a candle. What happens? It pulls out. You're not in control of that. Yeah. That's the primitive brain protecting you, the organism. So if you can put it in the candle and it pulls out, that's the brain saying, get the organism out of danger. So that's what I did.
What a unique way to engage it. Keep going.
Yeah. So I had the nurse when I finally got to the rehab hospital after 22 days in the hospital. Okay. I had the nurse. Now the trach was taken out, not intubated anymore. I could talk. It was a little like this. It was hard to talk. Okay. So I still needed surgery on the vocal cord to fix that thing. The intubation damaged it. Then, so I asked the nurse to put on Netflix and put on a show and point it right at me. I couldn't see it. Couldn't see anything. Okay. I know what, I hate to say it this way, but I know what blind people, quote unquote, see. I mean, for what I had happened, my visual cortex was not processing data. So I couldn't see. Okay. So she put on the screen. I could tell the screen was up because I could see the heat. I could see the shape of the screen in my mind because of the heat coming from that square rectangle of the screen.
Right.
But I wasn't really seeing, you know what I mean? So I looked to where the heat was. Now, by that point, I still could only move my eyes. So I was sitting there like this in the bed and I'm looking to where the screen was. I could feel the heat coming at sort of an oblique angle to my face. I just stared at the screen. It was like daggers going into your brain. It hurt so bad. And she put on a Netflix show. The Netflix show she chose was Seinfeld. Okay. I hate Seinfeld. Okay. I never liked it. Okay. It always seemed too contrived. Who are these people? I don't know. They're your friends. They're not mine. I don't know. So anyway, I stared at the screen and stared at the screen. I'd pass out from the pain fairly often. Okay. But I had to because I was desperate. See, desperation breeds focus and intent. Okay. And I had a mantra in my head: train the brain with pain, train the brain with pain, train the brain with pain. Okay. So as I stared at the screen, and it happens instantly, and I mean instantly, all of a sudden, bang, I could see shadows that quick. Bing. Just like that. Whoa. I was like excited. Now I could see shadows. The room was a bunch of shadows. It wasn't. And it's because the brain did the following. The finger was in the candle, but it had to pull the finger out, and it didn't know how. So it had to engage other neurons to pull the finger out of the candle. This is a metaphor. So the eyes were getting data in to the visual cortex, and it was hurting. The brain had to figure out what neurons could replace the ones that were destroyed. Okay? And so what did it do? It repurposed other neurons, and bam, just like that, I saw shadows. Okay? I kept staring at the screen. And it took about 3 or 4 more hours of this, of just seeing shadows. And I admit, during the time, I was like, oh, is this the best, as good as it's going to get? No, I'm going to see the stars again. That's what I kept saying. Good. So I kept staring at the screen, and then, pow, swatches of color started showing. Okay, and then it took another few hours for there to be a much more clarity. Now I could see Kramer versus Jerry Seinfeld. Okay, Kramer. I could even see the the hair. Yes. Okay. Yeah. So the thing was, when I saw that, I realized at that point, I'm going to get back to 100%. I guarantee it. I'm going to make it happen. I never had fear that I wouldn't. It's just that I was annoyed that I had to do it at all. Annoyed that I had to actually go through it. So anyway, I did that. I got the eyes back, and now I had to work on the hands and the body, the rest of the body. I wasn't going to be a quadriplegic, okay, if I could help it. So I asked the nurse, okay, Linda, a wonderful lady. Linda, could you put a red ball in my hand, a red exercise ball, or an exercise ball, those little squeeze balls?
Sure.
And she got a red one, so she put it in my hand. Well, I had been working on my eyes. I could see now it was a red ball. And I could kind of see where my hand was. And my hand was like this, laying like this. And she put the ball in my hand. And she closed her fingers around my hand to close it in. Oh, my gosh. The pain was excruciating. I felt like my fingers were getting burned by molten lava. It felt like my hand was being cut off at the wrist with a dull knife that was molten. It was absolutely horrific pain. And I yelled, ah, and she took it out. I said, no, put that back, Linda, put that back. And she put it back, did it. And I said, thank you. Okay, you can go. And she went. And now I'm stuck. I can't move that hand. I'm stuck with this pain. And the brain knew it. And the brain has to figure things out. Now I passed out a couple of times during that. And at one point I woke up and I looked at my hand with my eyes, and I noticed that the red ball wasn't there. I just saw the fleshy palm of my hand. I noticed the red ball was now in my lap. So when Linda came in, and they come in to check blood pressure and stuff every, so often. When she came in and said, Linda, could you put the ball back in my hand? And she did. And because they know there's tremors and things that happen. She put the ball back in, again, molten lava. And as soon as she let go, my hand went, ah, and it flung it out. And now the ball flew into my lap. And she said, oh, Mr. Scruffy, look at that. She called me Mr. Scruffy because I hadn't shaved in weeks. Okay. And I said, wow. Well, Linda, guess what? I'm a paraplegic, not a quadriplegic. I said, little victories. And she was like, wow, Mr. Scruffy, that's cool. So we did that. And that led to this, which led to this, which led to this, and this, and this. Okay. But then there was this. The ball in this hand, same process, led to this, led to this, led to this, led to this, and this. And it led to this, and being able to move my torso and being able to push my foot down into the bottom of the bed,
right,
where it felt like I was sticking my foot in molten lava, thankfully. And I kept pushing and pushing and pushing, sometimes screaming out loud. It was so painful. Luckily, they moved the other guy in my room out because, Well, anyway, I got everything back by doing that process. And the doctor had come in when I first came in there, and he said, again, as a sightless quadriplegic, he says, you're going to be with us 8 to 10 weeks, and you're probably going to need a year of recovery at home to work yourself out work into your new living condition. Being nearly sightless is a big problem, big adjustment. And I said, no, I'm going to walk out of here. He says, that's the ticket. You could tell he was being condescending.
Yeah.
Well, it was supposed to be 8 to 10 weeks, Peter. And less than 2 weeks later, he's walking in saying, we're discharging you tomorrow. Less than 2 weeks. I was already walking on a walker. I could walk short distances without aid. Okay. I could see again. The eye doctor in the rehab hospital was furiously writing notes. He couldn't believe that this sightless person was now reading the top line of the eye chart.
How wonderful.
Okay. It was APOTF, APEOTF. I'll never forget it. Okay. Yeah, it was. I couldn't read the second line, but that's only because it was smaller and I had yet to refine that vision. So anyway, that was pretty cool. Bottom line was that I ended up walking out of the hospital on a walker, and I was supposed to be in Irvine, California in September. And when I told the doctor initially when he came in about the 8 to 10 weeks, blah, 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 he said, and then a year at home, I said, oh, that doesn't work for me because I got to be in Irvine, California, speaking at a conference in September. And that made him go get the cognitive therapy people to make sure that I was thinking right. And they came in and tested me, they did all these tests. Okay. And at one point there was two of them. I could feel one was here and feel one was down here, a tall one and a short one. So a tall one here and a short one here. Okay. I could feel where they're talking. And the tall one said, I'm going to give you 7 numbers. I'd like you to repeat them to me backwards. Okay. She gave me 7 random numbers. I repeated them backwards. She looks at the little one over here and says, did he get that right? Did he get that right? And the little one says, yeah, he did. And I said, you want to hear it again? No. She goes, I think we're going to sign off that you're cognitively fine. I said, yeah, I've been worried about that. I said, I've been going through the astrophysics and astronomy stuff in my head, thinking about all the stuff I lecture about, and it's all still there. So we're good.
Marc, you, as noted at the top of the show, and I should say apologies for any errors in your bio. I hadn't even checked my earlier email. You did send me all the updates and all the images. I'll use them for the next show.
I didn't give you any time to do it, Peter. It's okay. I sent it in early afternoon today, obviously, so I don't expect miracles.
You sent some wonderful pictures, and again, you have taken hundreds of thousands of photos.
I have since I was a kid. At age 9, I made my own camera.
What an exciting thing to start to see these images. And again, working with whether it's a small handheld or a multi-million-dollar setup within, an observatory. I had lifted some from your photos section and just wondered if you could walk us through some of these corners of the universe that we're seeing here.
Yeah, this is a beautiful location called the Bubble Nebula. And it's an area where a star has blown off its outer layers. You can see them in red there. It looks like a big circular swath. There's one at the upper right as well.
Yeah.
That's a really beautiful one. And we took that with our wide field system that's in the Sonoran Desert. And I had this on my front lawn for years, Peter, and then I ended up moving it to Arizona on a friend's land because I can't afford land. And it's so dark there you can't see your eyes and your hands in front of your face, So this is a beautiful one, yeah.
Your setup out in Arizona is completed now? It's been finished, the building at this point?
Yeah, the Sonoran Desert one, which is about 75 miles west of Phoenix, and that's it. In the desert, that's a Sonoran telescope. That's SkyTour LiveStream. That's what STLS is. And Arizona artist Tara Diulis did that door. That's the Orion Nebula, and it's done with colored bottle caps. Okay, and she built the image. Yeah. She's very, very creative. Now, since that photo, we've added a anti-bird repeller, a little spinny thing, and we've also added an all-sky camera at the end of the piers on the right side there. But that roof rolls right off. Okay.
This is one of the big boys.
Yeah, that was the telescope that was on my front lawn. That's no longer there. That telescope is actually right there behind me. Yeah. Which you can't see right now with the picture there, but it's right there. I took that telescope out of the building, sold the building, and that telescope's going to get new life somewhere down the line. But
wonderful.
In the Sonoran, we have this one telescope, and we just opened about 4 months ago a telescope in Benson, Arizona, and we're on a mountaintop with other professional astronomers. So I did send you pictures of SkyTour Benson, so you can see the observatory out there. It's a row of roll-off roof observatories, and there's 10 on this ridge. And then we're the very end one, which is wonderful, you know. And so it's really, there it is. There they are. And we're the one on the far left. This is the very first picture I took of the mountain when I got there the first time. And if you look around, there's nothing for miles.
Yeah.
Nothing for miles. And the temperature up there is a little chillier than down in the valley in Phoenix. Okay.
Good.
And so, yeah, it's beautiful. And in this building, we have that's a typical sunset at the Sonoran site.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And this building, we have a 11-inch diameter telescope in there, all remotely operated from Connecticut here, just like the
amazing.
Yeah. The other night, I was running both. I had both of them open, and this telescope is 220 miles from the other telescope. And I opened both buildings, had both telescopes running, and we're both looking at there. That's the pier. Before we installed the telescope, which is there at lower left, right there. Yeah. And in the distance, in the corner of the building, you can see another dome over there. That's another domed observatory sharing the mountain up there.
How far are you from Phoenix at this point?
About 3 hours from Phoenix this way. It's actually more prescient to talk about how far from Tucson.
I see.
We're east of Tucson by about an hour. There it is. That's the installed telescope out in Benson.
Wow.
Okay. And every bit of that gear that you're looking at, most of that gear was from donations that were given to us by people. We are also a nonprofit organization.
Now, that reminds me, we are coming into our last few minutes, and I want to make sure that before we go out, everybody has all of your contact information. Plus, talk a bit about the SkyTour live stream. That has become an institution, and I'd like as many people who are my regular viewers to know about it.
Yeah, SkyTour LiveStream is a series of these telescopes that I created that are actually remote. I run them from Connecticut. Okay, now you can see me on screen. Hi. Okay, I run them from Connecticut and operate the telescopes out in Arizona, and we showcase the night sky. We show people, as we say, the universe live in real time. And showing the universe live in real time is very important for people that never get a chance to see the universe. And we, being an astronomer, I sit there and tell people what they're looking at, the evolution of these objects, where we're going, where we're coming. I may do one tonight, and when it's clear in both locations, as I said, I take the roofs off both buildings, and I wrote software for each building to actually control housekeeping things like take the roof off, turn it on and off, the electrical outlets and the telescope and so forth. Okay. I didn't know anything about that stuff. So I had to learn all that. And that was actually really cool, a real good voyage. And now I can automate anything, anywhere. I can automate you. Hey,
I could use some automation now that I think about it.
We should automate him, guys. What a good idea.
A couple of musts. The website that will bring you visitors to all of your various and sundry.
Very simple. It's SkyTourLive.org. SkyTourLive, all one word, .org. That's our portal.
And where
everything SkyTour.
Where can folks see you again next, live and in the flesh?
Let's see. Well, I'm doing several presentations here in Connecticut, but I'm going to be, I'll be in Phoenix at the end of August doing a talk down there for Phoenix MUFON. And then I will be in Nova Scotia in October doing a talk for the Shag Harbor UFO thing. And that's the only two I can think of here on the spot. There's more. I just can't think of them. I'm sorry.
No, that's great. Our time has flown. And I think for some of our viewers, this was not the scientific astronomy discussion that they thought we were going to have.
That's true.
It's miraculous, man. Your journey that continues full blown has been one of the most unique of anyone I know. Keep doing what you're doing, Mark.
I will endeavor to do so, and so thank you very much, Peter, and it was very nice to be with you here tonight and on your show. I really enjoyed it.
And please say hello to all my friends at Phoenix MUFON when you see them next. Well, coming up. Again, Peter Robbins, my special guest, Marc D'Antonio, the show Meanwhile Here on Earth. Stay well, stand up for what you believe in, and we'll see you next week.
Hey, Race, wherever you are.
And we'll see you.